And we are back, all you cool cats and kittens, with the pursuit of ownership. I have on here with me today an expert in our field that I'm super excited to actually meet personally. His name is Travis Hornsby with a student loan planner. He is absolutely amazing, and I'm actually really happy to be talking to him. He doesn't know this. I didn't mention it before the interview, but I reached out to him back in, I guess it was 2017 or so. I was getting really nervous. I knew I wanted to be a dentist. I knew I wanted to go to dental school, and I was doing some homework and figuring out just about how much it was going to cost. And I found his website, and I reached out to him via email, and he kind of, quelled some of my concerns about that and gave me some encouragement about going into this field. So, here we are, and I'm really happy to be talking to him. Welcome, Travis. How are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry I gave you bad advice. I didn't foresee this pandemic.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I'm still in school, so I'm a little bit shuttered by that, I guess. I'm not actually,
Yeah.
owning a practice and having to deal with that right now. I mean, certainly I am kind of suffering from it, but, I wouldn't quite call it bad advice just yet, but we'll see.
Well, so it's kind of funny because, being in school right now is like the best thing ever. If you have more than 1 year to go on
Right.
school at all, or
Yeah.
even if you only have 1 year, you're in great shape. Okay.
Right.
The American people are extremely stubborn and they're, total jerks. Okay. And the American people are just not going to be willing to stay shut down for like
Right.
years. I
Right.
mean, it's just not going to happen. And so, there's a lot of pain out there, and the pain and economic pain is going to run its way through the system for, a year, 2 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be new opportunities that are going to result from it. So, I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about his stuff, but, it's kind of hilarious that, if I could have only predicted what was going to happen in 2020, boy, oh boy, would I have done a couple things differently.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm personally, I'm a fourth year dental student, and I'm looking to graduate May of 2021. And as the audience knows, I'm kind of, underway on finding a practice that I could be purchasing within about 6 months to a year out of school. And it's interesting, hearing back all the responses I've been getting from, mailers and stuff that I've been sending out. There are people that are looking to sell practices that were not just a few months ago. It's amazing, how some of those things have changed. And obviously, there are a lot of negative effects and people that are just in very different headspaces right now. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything shakes out. And I think it's also going to be interesting from a student debt standpoint. How all this is really going to work out. It's almost unpredictable.
Well, yeah, like the old dentists, they're done.
Right.
I think that you kind of think about stuff and why would somebody hold on longer than they would want to? It's because they enjoy it, right? It's like a
Of
fun
course.
thing for
Yeah.
them. It's kind of like going and mowing the grass on a Saturday afternoon kind of thing,
Yeah.
and in summer, you love it, right? You do
Yeah.
it for free maybe. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden these old men and women, suddenly it's not a cakewalk anymore. They got to go put
Yeah.
on a spacesuit,
Right.
they
Right.
go do a procedure, and they're
Yeah.
like, okay, they're looking at you and seeing that you have a, one in, 10,000 or 1 in 100,000 risk of death from COVID, kind of
Right.
feeling young and invincible. And they're thinking about themselves, and they're thinking about, I want to shelter in place my grandkids, and that's it, you
Yeah.
know? And,
Yeah. You're not
and
wrong.
so it's kind of like, health is wealth, as the great Dr. Howard Farran of Dentaltown says, and so I think you're going to see a whole bunch of old dentists say, hey, now's the time. I'm done. Let's let the young kids come
Yeah.
in and just take over and do all this stuff. So, it's going to be a wild time. It's going to be a
Yeah.
wild time. And, who knows what should happen to dental practice prices right now,
Right.
too. It's so
Right.
chaotic. I'm seeing so much stuff, so many kind of, disagreeing, kind of signals from all over the place.
Yeah.
Some people are kind of like, hey, the real estate market's up, stock market's up, dental practice prices shouldn't be down. And then other
Yeah.
people are kind of like, hey, wait a second, didn't you see corporate real estate? It's just like nobody wants to rent it at all. So the dental practice might be the only option you've got, to get a rental
Yeah.
check from a corporate tenant for a while.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of nuts. It's going to be something that people will tell, their kids about for decades.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, there's no question about that. I've been keeping a personal journal of just all the
Yeah.
crazy things that I think I'll be wanting to tell people about in the future. And I think you're absolutely right about, you know, uh, that older dentist that, has kind of been hanging on because they still enjoy the show. Try mowing the lawn, like you said, with an N95 on. It's not fun. And so, it's going to be an interesting time to be getting into that space and everything.
Well,
So
it slows you down, right? I mean,
yeah.
all the pandemic related precautions, it slows you down a bunch. So,
Oh yeah.
go from mowing your lawn. My dad uses this riding lawn tractor, zip, zip, zip all over the place. And so now, imagine going to the push lawnmower, or even better, going to one of those manual things. And so I feel like, you think about speed and, efficiency and getting through it quickly. I feel like that's kind of what sort of happened a little bit, as it's been sort of
Right.
gummed up and slowed down. So so it's just kind of crazy thinking about we're going back to much slower dentistry. A lot of
Right.
people. I heard somebody say that you're kind of having people that could every 6-month cleanings. Maybe people are going to start going 1 year. They're gonna your kind of routine stuff's going to go down. I don't know. I mean, I think there'll be a little bit of that. Certainly from like part of the group of the country that is more afraid of the virus and more
Right.
compromised people and things like that. But I don't know, but it's kind of like I steal a lot of stuff from Dr. Ferran because he's great, but he
Of
kind of
course.
said,
Yes.
half the country's crazy and they'll just do anything and they don't even care, right? So it's kind of like, if you're really hurting, you need to go start a practice. There's plenty of places you can go start a practice. The
Right.
downside is you're not going to be able to go get season tickets to any NBA or NFL games. When you go start a practice,
Right, right. Yeah, I think a lot of the responses have been somewhat region specific. It just kind of depends on the medical history, so to speak, of your state, and how it's been dealing with everything. I'm currently in Georgia, and we were one of the last states to close and the first ones to open up, and received a lot of criticism for that. But looking at kind of how things have been trending very recently, and we're having this. I like to chronicle whenever we talk about COVID. We like to chronicle when the recording is actually being done, lest we
yeah,
look stupid at some other
yeah,
time. This is June 16th. And as of right now, the Georgia cases have not, had a crazy spike or anything. And I've been talking to, dentists that have kind of gone back out in the field, and they've been seeing folks. And for the most part, they got more people trying to schedule than they know what to do with. I mean, the people that, don't want to go to the office, and they want to stay home, they're taking care of themselves. But there's just so many people that just can't wait to get back in, because they've been unattended to for months. And so, it's just crazy. Just it's predictable in some ways, and then other ways you're like, I just don't understand what's going on. So
well, yeah. I mean, I watch CNN, but I also watch the whiskey bar that's below our apartment. So we live in an apartment, and there's a whiskey bar right below it. And
yeah,
so, I mean, it's my economic indicator. I decide whether or not to
right.
buy stocks based on how many people were at the whiskey bar the night
That's
before.
beautiful. Yeah,
So it has been packed. I mean, it has been,
yeah.
people have just been right up next to each other, no social distancing. I mean, I'm not saying
Oh,
that's right or anything, but
yeah,
people are, I mean, there's definitely a very large segment of the population that just doesn't give a what, and so those are going to be the same kind of people that are going to come in and get dentistry done,
right.
and not really care. You're going to be doing the precautions, and they're going to be like, "Yeehaw!" I like. I haven't washed my hands in 2 weeks. It's like, oh, great,
Yeah.
I'm gonna isolate you and wipe down this chair a dozen times, you know. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, it's just kind of nuts. The thing is it is so state by state specific.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of surveys of our audience to try to figure out what was going on with the kind of the shutdowns and just people's employment and everything. And so we found kind of there was a lot of cheating going on. So
Yeah.
quote unquote emergency cases.
Right.
That was very loosely defined by some people. I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we really saw like some of the states really shut down people. Maybe 60, 70, 80% of the dentists weren't even making an income at all. And then kind of all of a sudden, some of these states that still maybe had nominal shutdown orders in place, like people were going back and kind of saying, well,
Yeah.
too bad, I got to do something.
Right.
So I mean, it's real interesting to see people's. I mean, one kind of explanation I've heard is, we shut down because people were making that decision for themselves in March. Everybody kind of
Mhm.
collectively was just kind of making the decision themselves to just shut everything down because nobody really knew anything about this virus.
Yeah.
And then, May, June kind of time frame, people started thinking, wow, I want to get out and do things again. And so people started making that decision, to kind of get back to a more normal level of activity, especially in certain areas of the country that are more rural and less maybe packed in together, where people have a lot of population density, or where people
Right.
lack population density. So, I mean, it's been interesting. And, the interesting thing about corporate dentistry during this time is they
Mhm.
kind of showed I would say, a false sense of security for associates. Like a lot of the people that were
Oh, yeah.
getting paid were mostly associates, not private practice owners, because private practice owners had to shut down. And then the, giant dental groups, they had, more organized responses to PPE. They had more access to government stimulus, benefits and
Right.
PPP program stuff, and they were able to keep people on, on staff a little bit easier. And so, some people came out of that saying, hey, wait a second, corporate industry is great. They were keeping people on payroll while all my practice owner friends were screwed.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay. I mean, how long is it going to take that practice owner to go back and make up all of that lost income from what you got paid and they didn't get paid for those couple months? Because
Yeah.
the practice owner still applies for PPP. The practice owner can still
Right.
replace her W-2 income during that shutdown period of, the 2.5 months that PPP covers. So, the practice owner is still getting it. The only scary part is you're the one that has to go do it and talk to your banker and figure it
Yeah.
out and figure out who you're going to lay off and not lay off. And the other thing too that's great is they extended the PPP forgiveness timetable. So, if you talk with your lawyer, your CPA, whoever's on your professional kind of advisory team, you can really use that to get yourself 2.5 free months of staffing going back into opening up. Which, how amazing is that? I mean,
Yeah. Definitely.
dentist overhead's 60%,
Right.
right? And so on average, so if you can get, and most of that overhead's going to be your labor costs, right? So
Mhm.
essentially, you get 2.5 months of zero labor costs thanks to PPP while you're opening back up. I mean, that's kind of like the Fast and the Furious franchises where they press the nitrous and it makes you accelerate 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what that is for dental practices.
Right.
And if the thing is if you know this, if you understand it, you're in great shape. And two, it's kind of like, you talk about inequality in America. I mean, if you can afford to pay for advice, I mean,
Mhm.
unfortunately, the stimulus stuff is very much going to exacerbate income inequality. I mean, because
Yeah.
you're going to have within the dental profession, you have, if you're just looking at the dental profession only, who are the haves and the have-nots? The haves are the people with great practices that are producing tons of money. They're
Yeah.
people working towards getting rid of that practice debt, that are about to own an asset that's, throwing off, 45% of revenues instead of 30% of revenues as an associate. Plus,
Right.
you own an asset. So it'd be kind of like if you owned the house and the house paid you rent.
Yeah.
It's one thing that people don't really get, I think, with practice ownership is it's not
Sure.
just that you make more money as a practice owner, you eventually own the whole thing too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we really try to preach, here at Share Praxis, even, pre-COVID, of course, was all the advantages that come along with practice ownership. And I think that still holds true, even today. So, I'm really passionate about, getting people into it and getting people started with it, even though, there's tons of obstacles in front of them. I mean, before the COVID crisis, people were worried about, of course, their student debt, the huge load that they were coming out, being crippled by that. It's a very typical mentality to say, I'm going to go out, I'm going to practice for, 5, 7 years, 3, 7, something like that, until I get comfortable, until I get sort of on top of my loans, and then I'll kind of think about practice ownership. And one thing that we really try and push is that, somewhat to the contrary, if you can actually get yourself into successful practice ownership, and get that sort of cash flow early on, you can actually do a whole lot about that student debt and really, get yourself closer to financial freedom in that way. And I think that still really holds true with the COVID crisis.
Yeah, I think we do have to do a better job of explaining who dentistry is a great profession for. I mean,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. So like, here's just kind of an analogy, right? One of our clients, a few months ago, but pre-COVID, obviously, was making about $800,000 a year. Single
Hmm.
practice owner, absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
Lived in a small town. Lived in a place where people that grew up in the West Coast or the East Coast and want to stay in that kind of big metro megalopolis sort of regions, they would not want to live in this place. It's
Right.
flyover country. But what does it give you? You can drive four-wheelers until your heart's content, right? You can go hunting for deer season whenever it's on, you're there, right?
Yeah.
You have probably a boat on the lake in the summer you get to really enjoy. And that's a wonderful lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And the
Yeah.
thing is if you want to be in a big city, like downtown heart of someplace, then, unless you're going to pursue some sort of like sort of public health dentistry where you're going to get loan forgiveness and then it's not going to matter too much about the cost of your education, like, in that kind of a situation, you'd probably be better off, maybe better off in like, tech, finance, maybe medicine even, because there's a lot of big, medical centers in downtown regions that's, pay pretty well and you get loan forgiveness from that. But, I mean, I can't think of any like profession that's better in terms of stability, pay, lifestyle, flexibility, than dentistry, especially for, rural America, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be something that the really dental school should do a better job of discussing, because, the model of NYU having the largest, class size in America and one of the biggest cities in America, churning people out to basically be, I don't want to say cannon fodder, but that's basically what it is for the DSOs. I mean, that's kind of that's one model, and, meanwhile, you have people going, working in, Idaho, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, like these random places that just crush it.
Right.
Rural Georgia too. I mean, certainly I've seen a lot of people make a ton of money, 2-3 hours outside of Atlanta kind of thing. So, I mean, it really is kind of this interesting, bifurcation in dentistry that's happening. I think even more as the internet kind of makes people aware of like, okay, this is how you run a successful practice. These are all the resources you need. This is how you can, have a great website, and that's going to increase the differentiation over time. And I do think you're going to see, the age of kind of the mom and pop practice that like, is just sort of average. I mean, there'll always be those kind of practices, but I think you're going to really see just increasing spread and incomes in dentistry over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your note about sort of the times right now, it's very different. We're dealing with a lot of obstacles that didn't exist during the quote unquote golden age of dentistry, where you could just come out of school, hang a shingle, and make tons of money. But at the same time, there's a lot more information available for people. There's podcasts like this one, there's books, and there's all kinds of resources. There's websites like yours that help people out. And I think that the great differentiator is just how resourceful are people really willing to be. It's not necessarily like you're a victim of the circumstances of the industry. It's how what are you going to do to sort of expand yourself early on and prepare yourself and make yourself one of those exceptions to the rule, the one of the people that are able to go out and kill it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, you're absolutely right about the rural dentistry thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move to the middle of nowhere to kill it. But certainly it doesn't happen by accident if you're killing in one of those more saturated areas, if you're doing it in a more competitive area and making something of yourself. Even when you're coming out of school, say from NYU with $600,000 in debt, and there's all these dentists everywhere, and they say like New York needs a dentist like it does a bullet in the head or something like that, right? Like there's just so many dentists out there. So it's an interesting time because we have these novel circumstances like COVID, like massive student debt that are hindering people and making it seem like dentistry isn't quite the sell that it used to be. But at the same time, there's just, like I said, there's just so many more resources for people. So, there is going to be that spread.
But I know Uncle Tony in North Jersey makes $600,000 a year at his practice. So I'm going to make that money and I'm going to pay that back in no time.
Yeah,
I'm good. I mean, it's the best time ever. I was told, they told me it was the best time ever to be in dentistry. So I'm just going to go to North Jersey and I'm going to crush it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm obviously being facetious. So I mean, like the interesting thing though is, student debt. I mean, that's kind of what I should talk about probably mostly because, the income side of the equation is super important. And, just from talking to hundreds of dentists and specialists, like I know a lot about the income side of the equation, but I don't know as much as, a lot of people do about various, procedures you should focus on and ways to cut costs and things like that. But the thing I do know a lot about, especially, is just the debt side of the equation. So, so I'm working on an article right now for the site about analyzing the effects of what, Vice President Biden wants to do for student loans, right? Good. And so there's this thing called the pay-as-you-earn program. Yes. And, a lot of people are aware of it. And there's obviously revised pay-as-you-earn. There's multiple different plans. Right. But revised pay-as-you-earn, you pay 10% of your income for 25 years. You pay 10% for 20 years. And then, there's a new plan that Biden's wanting to do, basically called, I'm going to call it pay-as-you-earn on steroids. Okay. And what it would do is right now you have to pay 10% of your income for 20 years. And at the end, you have to pay income tax on whatever's left over that you still owe to the government. Right. And then it's finally paid off, and we call that the tax bomb. So Biden wants to do two things. He wants to eliminate the tax bomb, and he also wants to allow people to pay 5% of their income instead of 10.
Wow.
Okay. So we ran some numbers because right now, based on our analysis, if you come out of dental school owing 1.5 times your kind of expected, long-term income or less, you should refinance. So eventually you should refinance. So for example, you're thinking you're going to make 200,000 and you owe less than 300,000, then you should refinance. So so that's because that's a 1.5 debt to income ratio or better, right? So
Right.
with this new page worm plan, which is not going to necessarily happen, I'm saying that this is what he wants to happen.
Yeah.
That ratio would go from 1.5 to 0.6. So,
Wow.
so in other words, if you have 200,000 of income, but more than 120,000 of debt, then you should be going for forgiveness instead of refinancing.
Oh,
So that's everybody. I mean, that's 95% of the dental population that would need to go for forgiveness in that case. And so something's only scary if you're the only one going through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so people are more and more needing to go for forgiveness because incomes are not increasing as fast as the student debt amounts are because the schools know the game. And the schools know the game, so they can raise the tuition as much as they want because they're sneaky, what's. So because they know what's up. So okay, so you're talking about going for forgiveness in that extreme event. Well, think about what a 5% of income payment would be with no tax bomb. That's a straight up income tax. Okay,
Yeah.
so in that scenario, why would I care if I go to Augusta in-state in Georgia versus NYU? It's the same payment, 5% of my income, regardless of which place I go to. The only difference would be, do I think I'll get better education at the Georgia college, or do you think I'd get a better education at NYU? Do you think that you'd rather spend 4 years partying it up in Manhattan, or you want to spend 4 years and I guess going to the Masters or something? I don't know. I mean, whatever they do there for entertainment. So
that's about it.
Yeah. So I mean, so that's really interesting, isn't it? So because that's where sort of the I'd say the Democratic Party wants to move things, is student loans being an income tax. And eventually you might see them make it a progressive income tax where people that have higher incomes have to pay higher payments, higher shares of their pay. So that would make it more likely to refinance if they did that. But only Elizabeth Warren has suggested doing that thus far. I think that's going to be a policy innovation they'll think about later on more widespread. Now, the Republicans basically want to mostly just do status quo because the Republicans have wanted to repeal all these programs because they don't like the level of government involvement in the student loan sector, but they haven't actually cared enough to change any of it. So they've tried to pass the Prosper Act in 2017, which would have made refinancing basically the thing that you would do if you owed if your debt to income ratio is probably like 2.5 or less, you would have refinanced. So it would have made refinancing just the thing to do, basically. But the thing is, it didn't pass, because the House Republicans are pretty conservative, but the Senate Republicans are more moderate. And so, the Senate Republicans, you didn't have enough of a veto-proof sort of majority, filibuster-proof majority to pass something that was more kind of, more of a one-sided bill, right?
Right.
So that means whatever the future looks like kind of has to look somewhat like the past. And, what's complicated about student loans today is you have to pay a percentage of your income, but then you also have to pay this tax bomb. And so because there's a tax bomb, nobody understands what that means. So what it really means is anything between a 2% to 10% extra tax on top of your 10%. So the general rule of thumb is if you take 2 to 10% of your pay, under every circumstance, you'll have enough. If you put that away to mutual funds for 20 years, you'll have enough for the tax bomb. So what that means is your student loans are anything between a 10 plus 2 or 10 plus 10% tax. So it's a 12% to 20% tax, no matter if you owe $200,000 in dental school debt or $1 million because you went to a bunch of specialty programs. Well, what's a simple calculation to do is I don't know, Tyler, what was your undergrad major?
I was a biology major.
Okay, so if you had opened a biology store in the mall, how much would you have made?
Well, not a whole lot, I can tell you that. I worked for about $12 an hour out of school in a dental lab with my biology degree. So
well, that was because you're trying to get experience. But say you had to go out and actually get a job to support yourself. I mean, what would that income have been? Maybe 50,000, luckily?
More than likely, yeah. With that biology degree. I have other friends that didn't go to, professional school that just tried to, make do with the biology degree. And that's more like they're looking at.
Like 50-ish. So what you're doing there is you're taking an associate income of 120 and you're knocking off 20% of it to be real conservative. And you're saying the net pay of that was that worth the educational expense and the 4-year investment of time? So if you take 120,000 and you knock off 24,000, so I mean that's I think 96,000, right?
Yeah.
So that's your net pay after taking into account your student loans, regardless of how much you owe. And so if you get student loan forgiveness, it's more generous over time. Think about that as a tax cut. You're going to get a less amount of money taken out of your pay for your education. Obviously, what's going to happen is they're going to raise taxes to pay for that. So
Sure.
what will probably end up happening to dentists is that could be somewhat of a neutral thing. That could be you pay more in income tax and less in your student loans, so it kind of works out to maybe neutral, you know.
Okay.
And so if you're kind of thinking about going to dental school, and the reason why I told you to go is because it is, if you love the profession,
Okay.
and you love the idea of being a dentist, which is obviously very important. This idea of net pay, in a society where things are volatile, things are up and down. I mean, everybody was freaking out when dentists shut down and weren't making an income. You know why that is? It's because dentistry is like the most stable profession in the world.
Right.
It's one of the most stable. I mean, there's going to be a long time before people are letting robots, slam drills in their mouths. I mean, I'm, listen, as soon as they have like the self-driving package at Tesla that doesn't run into any overturned semi trucks, I'm game. I'm doing it. The second I can self-drive a car, I'm done. The
Yeah.
second I can, have my pilots, maybe one pilot that's a human in an airplane, but I'll be totally cool. They're already flying themselves anyway, right?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
But the robot drill in your mouth, I hope that thing doesn't slip. I hope there's
Yeah.
no software error,
Yeah.
So dentistry is, pretty secure as a field, and it sure as heck is insulated from, the economy and world events a lot better than the $50,000 income biology degree person is.
That's for sure.
So why are people paying so much more for dental school? Well, obviously they can charge it. And why can they charge it? Well, it's because the returns to education have never been higher. And the scariness of not having a stable profession with high income potential is at its peak. I mean, people are, back in the day, if you could go make $50 an hour at the UAW in Detroit with a high school degree, or you could go to, 8 years of education, after school and become a dentist. Well, shoot, a lot of people are just gonna go hit the union job and be happy with their lives, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But now you're talking about, good luck, finding a job that pays, your $12 an hour kind of jobs. And it's that, or you get this degree that insulates you from competition and market forces and globalization forces. And now you've got a secure job with a high income that you can afford a nice lifestyle with. So I think that the debt issue that I see is mostly an assets problem. So I tell people, your issue is if your student loan debt is a tax and not a debt, which for many people it is.
Yes.
For some people, imagine if Jeff Bezos could get out of paying income tax or paying $5,000 a month, right? I mean, imagine that. That'd be the biggest giveaway of all time, right? If he could pay $5,000 a month instead of paying 10% income tax or 1% or whatever he pays, So I mean, that would be great, but that's what dentists have the option to do. If paying that 10 or 12 to 20% income tax is a bad deal because you're making that much money relative to your debt, then that's why you can refinance and just pay, 3,000-4,000 a month at 5% interest rate and get rid of it, right? But given that it's a tax, then that means that your debt is actually zero. And if your debt is zero, then the problem you're facing is one that every professional faces, which is I'm not starting my life in reality until I'm 26 or 27, whereas everybody else started it at 22. Yeah, and everybody else before that started at 18. So I've given up 8 years of earning potential or 4 years of earning potential to go to school, and now I got to play catch up. And the thing is, because I have this big income and because I'm a credit-worthy borrower and every bank in the world wants to throw money at me, now you're telling me that if I sign this paper that you put in front of me, I can get that brand new Maserati? Are you telling me all I have to do is just sign a piece of paper and
Easy.
there's something that happens monthly with my bank account that like pulls money out and like I can have that kind of a car? And I'm 26, 27 years old and you're telling me I can get that for all the work I did? Heck yeah.
Right.
I'm not driving a Prius. No, thank you. And then you get into the other stuff like, people buy like people have a house-itis or, I don't know what you call it, but people get super excited for houses. It's like the hottest commodity around or something. And people don't feel like they're an adult until they buy a house. Well, the thing is your practice is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
The house is just like kind of a place where you live. And, you don't get a gold star for owning a house. Like, best case scenario, you bought a house in like 2011 Seattle that went up 50%. But after, broker fees and transaction costs and all that, you'd probably only net maybe 30% price appreciation. Meanwhile, the stock market, doubled over
Right.
that time frame. So why are you so excited about your gangbusters, Seattle, you know, home price? It's because of leverage, because you put, 3% down or something like that. And that 3%, the house price doubled. And so, your, $10,000 made you 100,000 or something. And you think
Yeah,
you're the
sure.
biggest genius in the world. No, you got freaking lucky. You were in a once in a generation, event for home price appreciation. So
Yeah.
most people around the country are living in these places, these big cities, where if anything happened to home prices, it'd be catastrophic for their net worth and they would never be able to sell it and get out of it. And then you're stuck working for corporate, making a fraction of what you need to actually achieve financial independence too. So, I mean, that's a little, of a long-winded way of saying avoid houses and cars like the plague until
Yeah.
you've, gotten yourself into a position where you're really building something, and
Right.
then go out and splurge. Like, I want people to drive Maseratis if they want to drive Maseratis. Don't get me wrong. The only thing that I want to say is, you got to make sure you've taken care of business first.
Sure.
If you
Yeah.
take care of business, then go out and reward yourself.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are into this, oh, I
Leverage.
deserve a gold star because I went through dental school and I worked hard and stuff. I mean,
Right.
yeah, you deserve it, but the DSO will get to deserve you for a decade or so.
Right. No, I like that advice. It's like people are just sort of coming right out the gate, leveraging essential aspects of their life, and then sort of building the financial house later on. And I think that's definitely getting it backwards. So to sort of tie things together for our audience, who primarily are people that are looking to get into ownership early, and they're looking into how do they really stay on top of their finances and make themselves the most attractive borrower, to get into ownership early. What is sort of your prescribed plan for that? Let's say someone's coming out of school with, I don't know, we'll make it, a nice round $400,000 in student debt. They're looking to get into practice ownership within maybe a year or so. What's the path for them? What's the roadmap that you would draw for them?
Yeah, I would say consolidate your debt as soon as you graduate to get it. You can do that on studentaid.gov and get it
Okay.
on and get it onto the pay as you earn plan if you're pretty sure you're going to go for forgiveness, and get it onto the revised pay as you earn plan if you think you're going to pay it back. And the reason
Okay.
for that is just because pay is better for forgiveness generally, and repay is better for interest subsidies, which are going to keep your balance in check. And you're going to get a lot of your interest paid for you while you're working on becoming a practice owner. So get
Okay.
it on one of those two plans. And then every mortgage broker or practice lender in the world is just going to see your required student loan payment of whatever it is a month, and they're not going
Right.
to be concerned about that.
Right.
There is a period in the first 12 months where your payment is zero a month, and that can actually throw the lenders off a little bit because they do want to see some sort of positive payment. But,
Something. Yeah.
I would not worry about that. I would just pay the zero or pay whatever the minimum is, and then focus on your savings. So, if you build up your savings, that's what gives you enough money to, not have to do anything for a while, right? If you have big amount of money sitting in cash, that's what gives you the freedom to say, if I don't see any patients for a year or two with my startup that I did, that's okay.
Yeah.
Worst case, and you want to make sure you hire a lawyer. Just go through all the worst case scenarios. Okay, if I did a startup, what's the worst thing that they could do to me? Oh, the
Hmm.
worst thing they could do to me is, I get stuck with this practice loan and I have to decide, do I want to declare bankruptcy and have 7 years where I have to be an associate, or do I want to make good on that practice loan while I'm an associate somewhere else so that I have the ability to go buy a practice within that 7 year window faster, right?
Sure.
So I had somebody, they did that. They basically had a disaster of a practice that happened. And, I think it was like the plumbing the doctor sold it to him like failed catastrophically and
Oh
flooded
my
the whole
God.
building and had to be condemned. And so now he's got no building to do dentistry, and he paid all this money for it and everything. So, and he's in the middle of a lawsuit with the person, right? And so, but that doesn't help him. So what does he do? That's like the worst case thing you can think of, kind of. I mean, if you're
Yeah,
thinking
for
like
sure.
a total disaster, that's pretty much
Yeah.
case study there. And so he just went back to work for a DSO, made money, to pay the practice loan, and he's going to go back and do another practice. And if that one fails, I'm assuming he'll declare bankruptcy at that point, and then just go do DSO work, and then just build, try to build back up again, right? But that's an extreme case. I mean, I've heard
Yeah.
one of those stories out of 500, 600 people. So it's not common, I mean, people kind of latch on to the one story. I'll give you an example, right? So there was this article in the media recently about how it was like, young person gets COVID-19 and has double lung transplant, no, conditions, no, comorbidities or anything. Totally healthy person got COVID-19. Her lungs fell apart. She needs a liver transplant.
Okay.
That's 1 in 100,000 people, maybe. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I mean, that is exceedingly, or 1 in 10. It's exceedingly rare. Yet we as humans see these terrifying examples and we latch onto it and say that's going to happen to me.
Right.
And the thing is, yeah, it could. I mean, that's what probability is. That's what risk is. Is yeah, it could happen to you. But certainly if you wear masks and you sanitize your hands and things like that, you reduce the risk. So
Sure.
same thing for being a practice owner. The bad stuff that you heard about, it's not going to happen most likely. It's very unlikely that it's going to happen. It's far more likely that something okay will happen. And
Yeah.
then you can mitigate that risk if something will happen that's bad, like hire a really good inspector for your building instead of just whoever's available, right? Hire a really good practice management consultant, hire a CPA that has done dental practice evaluations to evaluate the purchase price
Yeah.
before you buy. Make sure the lawyer knows dental agreements and actually reviews the contract versus you reading it and thinking, okay, that's great. When you're not a lawyer and you don't know what the loopholes and the penalties are if you mess up,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, those are just some thoughts for people. I think that, you just, in terms of other things, so you got the cash. So I guess first get your loan on an income-driven repayment, then get the cash, maybe simultaneously open up a retirement and a brokerage account somewhere and put a tiny amount of money in. I don't care what it is. You could put $100 a month in and I'm happy. Just open up, if you have a 401k, you contribute to that. If you have a brokerage account, you have to open one. So go out and open one at like Vanguard or Betterment, someplace like that.
Right.
And just make automated contributions from your bank account, but focus on the cash and then listen to a lot of podcasts. So listen to yours, listen to Dentalpreneur, Dentistry Uncensored, Dental, I think, what are some other ones? Millennial Dentist, Dental Amigos.
Advisors. Yeah.
Yeah. So listen to all of them while you're working out and, in the gym. And then you're going to be in great shape because you only need a year of clinical experience to be clinically competent to be a practice owner from what I've seen. I mean, I've never seen somebody that has told me as a practice owner that, yeah, I think I could not have handled this if I if I didn't do the year, So
Right. Yeah.
that means you've got what you need. You've got the tools after a year. The question is, do you have the confidence and do you have the risk tolerance?
Yeah.
It really comes down to confidence and risk tolerance. The risk tolerance, you can't really coach somebody on too much. Like the risk tolerance is are you willing to take, 997 out of 1,000 odds or not? I mean, that's really what it's about. Do you want to take the 99 because it's like a 0.3% default rate for practice loans?
Right.
So, so do you want to take the 997 chances out of 1,000 that you're going to be successful or not? And the way to make your risk tolerance better is have more money in the bank.
Right. Absolutely.
That's the secret is just have more cash. And then the other thing is, I said risk tolerance, and then the other thing is confidence. So, you just have to know that that you can do it. I mean, don't discount yourself. So, like, my I'll give you an example. Female dentists in particular are way underconfident relative to what they should be.
Sure.
Just from what I've seen on average, and that's always dangerous talking about averages. But there is some truth to the fact of men kind of tend to be a little overconfident relative to their skill set, and women tend to be underconfident relative to their skill set, right?
Yeah.
And so you have that kind of go through, I think, sometimes to practice ownership. And it's obviously there's plenty of men that are underconfident too. But it's kind of like, and there's, maybe I guess some women that are overconfident too, although I haven't really seen too many of those cases yet. So it's like, so really go out there and know that you are enough. Know that, yes, you deserve to be a practice owner. Yes, people are going to hire you. And the thing is like when somebody says, why am I going to hire a 27, 28-year-old dentist? Why would I trust you? And say, well, because Mrs. Smith, we're going to be here for 30 years, 40 years, and you're going to be able to look at me and have one dentist the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's if you live for 50 years and you're 60 now. So you'll still have me as a 110-year-old.
Right.
And they that stuff up. You know what I mean? I mean, and so you can say, well, I'd love to treat you. I don't take it personally if you feel like you need a dentist with more gray hair. Dr. So-and-so is a few, couple miles away or
Yeah.
everything. But thing is, rumor on the street is he's thinking about retirement in 15 years. So you might have to be looking at a whole new dentist there, when you start getting into your big time teeth decay, but, we'll have a good relationship and I'll know all your history and I'll be able to fix everything, you know? So I think that you just have to have that confidence and that just, letting things roll off of you and don't just, don't kind of feel like you can't do what you need to do. I mean, you went to dental school and you got charged a gazillion dollars for a reason. It's because you hopefully learned some things, right? And
Yeah.
then after a year of applying that in a clinical setting, there's no reason you can't do it. I mean, like these rural doctors, it's kind of like these people show up and they have to drive another 3 hours if they wanted to go see a specialist and they need the
Yeah.
procedure done and and you know how to do it. You're just scared you're going to mess something up. And it's like, no, I mean, they need the help. Do it.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be my big last suggestion for practice ownership is just go do it and don't let the student loan debt hold you back.
Yeah, Travis, that is absolutely amazing, and it really falls along with some narratives that we've been going along with on this show for a long time. I mean, first of all, you were talking about getting help, just being willing to, not sparing the expense to, reach out to experts and make sure you have that good consultancy when you're, going into practice ownership and you're not, quite literally, as in the example you mentioned, buying a pile of shit, which is pretty much what that guy did.
Yeah.
But also just, what you were talking about, which in other words is imposter syndrome. And I think that's endemic in dentistry. So many people just not really believing in themselves, thinking that, some sort of circumstance like, oh, I don't have enough private practice ownership, I need to be out for 3 to 5 years until I feel comfortable. A lot of those are very emotion based and very, internal. And people are letting their external, circumstances sort of reflect that lack of confidence. And that's why I think there's that lack of success, that lack of, just going for it and having that sort of early success in your career. And by, having that internal change that can happen, literally instantaneously, if you will it to happen, the effects can be, really incredible. So I'm very impressed that you brought that to the table. I wasn't really expecting that from the student loan planner, if I'm being honest.
Well, I mean, we like I said, we do know a lot about practice ownership
Yeah, of course.
and things. And it's not because I am some genius expert, just because we talk to hundreds of people.
Right.
And if you ask a lot of smart people different things, you talk to people in the profession, you talk to people who are practice management consultants, and you listen to a lot of dental podcasts, you learn a little bit. I mean, I've been doing this since 2016, and probably we've advised $1 billion now overall.
Unbelievable.
I probably have advised myself maybe about 200 million in dental school debt. And so,
Which is like 10 dentists, right?
yeah, it was that, yeah, 10 dentists and one orthodontist. The orthodontist owed about half of that.
Oh my gosh.
So no, I mean, it is interesting. People always want to know, how bad am I? Like everybody wants to be compared to their peers. They're like, oh man, like how bad am I? I'm like, dude, I'm like, you're like, 50% less than like the typical average. People are like, really? So I mean, it's pretty rough. I mean, and the statistics have got to get better for the people who are maybe. I mean, I doubt that there's too many people listening to this considering dental school who are not already in the field, maybe. But hopefully they get better with disclosures, because if you look at the median debt for dental school, the median reports are lower than the averages.
Yeah.
And then the averages include also a lot of these lower, debt amounts of people that got 3-year HPSP scholarships, right? And people that had, support to pay for tuition, but not living expenses and things like that. And so then you get all these, deans saying like, oh, our average debt's only this. And it's like, oh, great. Are you going to pay for my living expenses? Or, is there somebody just going to fall out of manna from heaven that's going to cover that for me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think that the good news is, dentistry is a great profession. It's going to remain a good profession for a long time. Is it going to be a bad profession in certain circumstances? Yes.
Sure.
And should you do it for money? Absolutely not. You could probably do other things if you're smart for money that would be better if you're after money.
Definitely.
But you can live a great lifestyle. You can help people. You can, really make a killing and go bag every deer you can imagine, in the country, right? I'm just joking around, but dentistry is a great profession. You just have to know why it is, and you just have to stay positive. And the debt thing, I never get worried about people with dental school debt. That's never really the thing that freaks me out at all. I mean, maybe it's because I see it all the time, right? But if you're a competent dentist and you see what's like a common problem in dentistry that some like a patient would get freaked out by, but you'd be like, oh, I can fix that.
It's usually like a front tooth thing. Like someone is just afraid like
Yeah,
their front tooth fell out and they're like, what am I gonna do?
yeah.
That's always scary for people.
Baseball hits.
Baseball, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
How about a baseball hits a 16-year-old, girl softball player right in
yeah,
the mouth? Cut,
right.
teeth, both two front teeth are cut kind of in
Yep,
half. I mean, I'm assuming that can happen, right? And
oh, of course.
they're freaking out. I mean, her life is over. She's not gonna have friends. She's ever gonna get
Yeah,
married.
yeah,
She's not gonna, be able to get a job, right? Everything's
yeah,
over. Everything's through. But it's an easy fix if you know what to
right.
do, right? If
Absolutely.
you know the rules, if you know how to do it, if you know like what's gonna happen long term,
Mhm.
right? And so that's kind of what us with student loan debt is. We don't have the perfect crystal ball. We can't tell you there's 100% error-free rate, but we can tell you it's not something that you should be freaked out about like that 16-year-old girl. Yet most of the dentists that we run into are like the 16-year-old girl softball player that got hit in the mouth. I mean
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that
kind of
makes sense.
what it is. And so so don't be that person. Be the person that knows it's going to be okay, and just I guess trust me that it's going to be okay. Or we have we have the blog that you found a couple years ago. I mean, since studentloanplanner.com, since then we have a podcast, Student Loan Planner podcast.
Mhm.
So people can search that
Cool.
and listen to a bunch of different episodes on people with buying practices and dealing with dental school debt and even other professions to see how screwed dentists are relative to other people, which is fun.
Yeah,
But it's going to be okay. I mean, I'd much rather be a dentist right now than most other professions, because you have control over your future. And again, it's kind of like, I mean, like, so I'll give you an example too in personal life here. Healthcare is going to have a long road back. I mean, everybody always compares dentistry to medicine, but a lot of, we're going through personal stuff right now. My wife's a physician, and there's talk of, not being able to pay people and things like that because elective, surgeries can't happen. And, and for giant hospital systems and everything, they have to go real slow opening back. Whereas, you know, Jimmy in Kansas can just say, all right, patients, come on in. You got toothaches.
open the gates.
I'll put my spaceship suit on and I'll put my gas mask on and we'll just go
Yeah,
for it.
yeah,
I don't
that's a
know if the
great
thing
point.
works. It's vintage World War I, but I'm assuming I can get it. They couldn't get mustard gas, through it. So I'm assuming COVID can't get through it. Let's go.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't know. Just try to have fun with this. Try to laugh. I mean, there's so much pain, so much absurdity, and so a lot of legitimate pain that's happening right now. So, just do what you can and don't get beaten down.
yeah, Travis, that is absolutely incredible. I mean, I hope that the audience feels as encouraged as I do. Hearing the things that you have to say. I mean, you dealing with so many people that are coming out with huge debt sums, and just being able to say, it's going to be okay. You're in a great place. I think that's something that a lot of people want to hear, especially during these times right now. So I really appreciate you being on. So I'm sure that there's going to be a whole lot of people that want to reach out to you if they haven't already heard of you. What's the best way that they can get in touch with you if they want to search out your services?
Yeah, check out studentloanplanner.com. So go to that place and you'll see all the places to click on hire us or help, and you'll learn about our services. Also, if you want to send us an email, you can send us an email at help@studentloanplanner.com. So you can send that to us, and our team of consultants are going to see that and respond to any of your questions.
Okay, well, that is fantastic. I just want to thank you for coming on and bringing your best self to the table. This interview has been a lot more than I honestly expected it to be. You have an incredible global knowledge of dentistry and the things that we're facing. I think in some ways you understand better what the real obstacles that dentists have are better than they do. So just thank you so much for your insight, and I really appreciate you being on.
Sure thing.
All right. Thanks, Travis.